Welcome to No One is Safe, a podcast about books, life, and where the truth can be stranger than fiction. I'm your host, Elizabeth Scozzari. Welcome! We are in episode 7 of season 2, and I still haven't figured out if I say that for my benefit or yours, but it doesn't matter. I am so happy that you are here, and I have 5 or 6 books, I think 5, to talk about today. Surprisingly, one of them changed my life. 2 of them were okay. One of them I still have mixed feelings about. And yeah, we'll just jump right in. Starting with the St. Ambrose School for Girls by Jessica Ward. I gave it 3 stars. I had been thinking that this book was going to be a psychological thriller, a mystery, a murder mystery, and a little more fast-paced per se. What this book was a very introspective young girl living with and coming to terms with her mental illness and her diagnosis and kind of like what that means to her as a person, how that impacts her as a person. And it was just kind of very slow moving and drawn out. And I loved the passage descriptions for how this character saw things, how she saw walking to the store, how she saw going to the school, how she saw her mother, how she saw herself. So I loved the descriptive passages. I thought that they were really interesting and unique. I didn't love that we didn't get a murder until probably 2/3 of the way through. And like the build up to that murder was very slow. It was a very slow paced book. And then all of a sudden things picked up and in a jiffy we got to like the end. But within 20 pages we had a murder, beginning of a climax, almost like toward a resolution. So it went from moving very slowly to like brrr. And I also wasn't sure if I necessarily believed one of the characters' transformations throughout the book to like who they become in those last 20 pages, or excuse me, that last like 1/3 of the book. And so overall, I gave it 3 stars. It wasn't bad. I did end up thinking about it a lot after. Wasn't my favorite. The next book that I still have mixed feelings on, and I'm sure it's an unpopular opinion, is A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. And the reason I think it's an unpopular opinion is I feel like you either loved this book or you hated this book, and there's not allowed to be a middle ground. I am the middle ground. Thank you for joining me here. I am happy to see you. I had been hesitant to read A Court of Silver Flames because I had enjoyed the ACOTAR series as it was. A Court of Thorns and Roses, A Court of Mist and Fury, A Court of Wing and Ruin, and that last one, A Court of Frost and Starlight. I had enjoyed those as kind of a complete series on its own, head to toe, tells a comprehensive story. I loved the characterization. I loved Feyre's journey and accepting herself and all of those things that like at the time I read them really connected with me. I had mixed feelings about Nesta in the sense that to get a story from her perspective or of her experience in this world and going from rich to poor as a human to, probably should have said it before, but spoiler alert, into the world of the Fae, it would have been a really neat story and I would have enjoyed that. However, Nesta is not a great person and was never really a great person in my opinion. And so while people can change and grow and all that beautiful stuff, I didn't really care about her changing or growing because she never really seemed great. And then toward the end, it was almost like a little too late and I still didn't love how she had handled or carried herself. So I was apprehensive at best to go into this. I put it off for a really long time. I decided to listen to the audiobook. Figured this way I could listen to it while I'm doing other stuff, while I'm walking, whatever. If I like it, I like it. If I don't, I don't. I happened to get it within a couple of weeks of requesting it. I started listening to it and I didn't give it like a rating, so I can't even give you like a number of stars. Because by the time I was done, I did like a lot of like the aspects of it. Like I liked the character of Gwen. I liked how Cass kept reaching out to Nesta. I loved like their moments of sex together. That was great. I'm a firm believer that like Wedding Crashers, while a movie, is a love story. Vince Vaughn and the girl whose name I can't remember off the top of my head, but the quirky redhead, they have a lot of sex. They end up falling in love. And like that is an acceptable love story. I realize that people will tell me Wedding Crashers is a rom-com. And it's funny, but like to me, that was the pinnacle of a love story when I was younger. And so I'm good with Nesta and Cassian's story. I loved what happened through her journey in like the mountain. But, and it's a big but, what I didn't love was that it didn't feel like Nesta's story. What it felt was like, we have you under contract for 5 books. We need that 5th book. Churn it out. Or, hey, we know you started this. We're going to need it by this deadline. And so it felt like an author who created this story either resentfully or without as much passion as the other books. And it kind of just didn't fit for me. And I actually saw it in someone else's review and they said it better than I could have. Like in my head, I had the right thoughts, but I didn't have the right words. And they said that Nesta deserved a better story. And I would agree with that. I think that Nesta's nastiness and growth and how she got to where she was as a person, her emotional journey, even before she came to the world of the Fae, and then after her transformation as a powerful person, as a powerful woman, as an angry woman, all of those things could have been explored, in my opinion, in a way that would have made this book better and would have, kind of done a better job telling Nesta's story. And I think some things would have been not followed through with better, but would have been ironed out better, could have been expanded upon better. And so overall, it was an okay book, but I didn't love it, and I didn't love it for Ness or Cassian. Like, I felt like it was almost rushed. And there's the Oscar Wilde, I think it's Oscar Wilde, easy reading is hard editing, or easy reading is hard writing. And it felt like this was, I'm going to put easy in like some kind of air quote bunny ear situation, because it was very long. There were repetitive parts, and it didn't seem to have the same finesse and care and touch to it that the other books had. So I don't know if it was just a character thing or if it just, maybe SJM was having a day when she wrote this one. But even though it's a long book, I would say that it could have been edited down, and then maybe other parts could have been expanded upon. So, okay book. Should you read it? I would say it didn't ruin the character of Nesta for me. I know that some people felt like it did, but it also didn't add to her character, and the growth that she had, I felt, was kind of manufactured. And that's kind of the overall feeling I had about the whole book. It was just manufactured. So we're going to go from that book to another book that I didn't actually finish for 2 reasons. One, I had it on Libby, and I renewed it once, and then did I renew it twice? I definitely renewed it once, and then by the time it was due, I just let the library take it back. But I did get through 75% of it, and it's My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. The reason I didn't get through it was, again, part of the Libby needing to return it on time thing. But also, again, it was another slow-moving, introspective book. I liked how the main character did not take a victim stance. I think that, there's a lot of ways to interpret what happens to us in this life. I think if you choose to be a victim, you will always be a victim. And I think that people have a misconception about what it means to choose not to be a victim. what happened to, if you're not familiar with the story, My Dark Vanessa is about a young woman who she's like a young kid, 14, 15, somewhere in there. Actually, I believe she might have been 15 or 16. So she's around 15 years old. She's at this private school. She has this relationship, for lack of a better term, with her much older male teacher. The book is written from two perspectives. One, while she was having, like, while this relationship, again, I put it in like air quote bunny ears, whatever you want to call it, while this relationship was developing, and then also where she is now in life, and I think it was 2017 the book takes place in. So in 2017, in the midst of the Me Too movement, and how those two parts of her life kind of parallel each other. I liked that. I thought it was an interesting concept. I mean, obviously it's heartbreaking when anything terrible happens to a person, but especially a child, especially a young woman being taken advantage of by an older man or an older person. But I did enjoy the parallel, the concept I thought was very strong and great. I loved that Vanessa chose to see a different side of things just because society told her that she should have been a victim. I liked that she didn't accept that per se. However, I do think that like she needed the therapy and the processing skills to kind of weed through what happened and how she looked at it to come to like a healthy resolution. I read 75% of the book. I didn't finish that last 25%. But it just seems like she's kind of stuck in this place of, I wasn't a victim, but I don't know how to describe what happened to me. How do I reconcile my feelings? And so without fully committing to choosing to not be a victim or choosing to address what happened to her in any capacity, she kind of, in my opinion, gets stuck there. I'm not a psychologist, so take that opinion for what it's worth. I mean, I've done enough therapy in my life. Yay for trauma. Just kidding, kind of. But I did learn stuff. Like, I've learned every single thing that has given me post-traumatic stress disorder or caused me to panic or feel upset, or what some people would call like, oh, well, you were a victim of this. And like, that's not how I feel. And I've also taken the steps to process my own stuff so I can continue to live my life as myself without other people. Like, other people can try to inflict things upon me. Sometimes like they ding my armor, but I get back up and move forward living my life how I want to, and not with things that other people have pressed upon me. And, you know, this book for me was interesting because it kind of deals with that. It deals with her mental health and her mental well-being after having this experience. And then it also shows like what the grooming process kind of looks like. And, you know, I was talking to my cousin's wife about this book, and she's the one who recommended it to me. And it's so interesting. She's younger, not by much, but she's younger. And, you know, we're all in different places in our lives. And as we were discussing it, like, I could wholeheartedly have seen myself when I was not even like when I was younger than her, probably her age too. Like, again, just not that much younger. I think she's like 3 to 5 years. But even 3 to 5 years ago, Elizabeth, I could see reading this book and like knowing it's wrong, but like kind of rooting for them because I do love a good taboo romance, but then realizing that like this guy's a piece of shit human being and like a shit stain on society, and realizing that. Because when I was younger, I almost always rooted for like the bad guy to a certain extent, and then realized like as that manifested in my real life that I'm an idiot, and I learned from those mistakes. But, you know, it's just interesting how in this, where I'm at in my life, I started reading it and was instantly so turned off by the main male character of Jacob Strain. And my cousin's wife had like a different opinion at first. She was like, but I could see it. And I'm like, no, I could see how you could see it. It's just so funny. I think I finally dated enough people who, while not pedophiles, have questionable moral compasses and like things like that, or who have very misconstrued concepts of how love should be shown. And so I think I finally hit enough of those in my life that I took a step back and I was like, this man is painted red. He's not red flags. He is a red flag. Like, he is painted red. I did think it was very interesting. Where I started to feel the disconnect is when Vanessa went to college. At that point, it had just been slow moving because it's a sad, somber story. It's very introspective. It was well written. I would say that there are definitely passages that are quite beautiful and quite moving, and like you feel them. So well written, but slow, and like rightfully so. But by the time she got to college, I think I needed to be done with this book before I actually had gotten to the ending. So I don't know if I'm going to recommend it for like a good time read, but certainly it's an interesting concept. It was well executed, and I don't know how it ends, but I would definitely revisit it or finish it at a later date. The next book I'm going to talk about, I'm going to try really hard not to cry. There's two. One is lighthearted. We'll get to that one second. The first one, you might as well just like impale me through the chest now, take my heart out, spit on it, put it back in. It's called Long Shot by Kennedy Ryan. This is the book that I referenced a couple episodes ago that changed how I define what a 5-star book is. Because this book is a 5-star book, and to call anything else 5 stars without it being somewhere in the vicinity of what this book accomplished, it wouldn't be right. So the premise of this book, and I have it on the shelf over there so I could read you the back. I'm not going to. The premise of this book is about Iris and August. August is on his way to becoming a professional basketball player, making his dreams come true. He meets this girl, Iris, at a bar. Iris meets August, instantly has this connection, but she is a boyfriend. One that, like, they've been dating for a year. It kind of, like, everything has been going the way it should, or so she feels. As she's starting to really figure out what she wants, or who she wants to be, and who she wants to move forward in her life with, something happens and she gets locked in, so to speak, to this relationship that she was already in. Lots of spoilers here. I'm going to do the best I can to not really give too much away, but there might be spoilers is how I probably should have said that. What ends up happening to Iris is the relationship she stays in becomes so incredibly abusive, physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, every kind of abuse that you could imagine. And what you see up close firsthand is that abuse is not love. It is not romanticized. You can tell, and I did read the acknowledgments in the back that Kennedy Ryan talked to survivors. She talked to them. She listened to them, and you can tell that she listened because everything that happened to Iris could easily happen to anyone. And everyone thinks it can't be them, or it wouldn't be them, or they would know better. And that's just not true. That is not true. And it's never just as simple as we'll just leave. Because there's a lot of times there's already been too much put in place to prevent that from happening. So what you see in Iris's story is someone who is in this god-awful place and who is doing the best thing that she can for her child and for herself. And now, the other side of this book is August, who keeps getting these moments in passing with Iris because, as it turns out, his biggest competition in the professional basketball world is the man that Iris is with. And he gets fleeting moments with her and he feels this connection and he can't shake it. But he also is growing his career. He's achieving his dreams. And finally, when everything comes to a breaking point and the dust settles, they get this moment together. And let me just tell you, what Kennedy Ryan was able to do in showcasing what love is not and showcasing what abuse really is, and then in the same book showing what actual love is and showing what being a survivor is and what it means to a person to have survived something and still come out as a part of themselves. Absolutely, like, it is beautifully written. It actually might be one of the best written books. Like, from a technical standpoint of writing, Kennedy Ryan's writing in Long Shot changed my life. Like, what she was able to accomplish, the story she told, the details and deftness that she, like, it's a genuine masterpiece. And this is the book that really set the precedent for how I judge books moving forward. I've read a lot of books to my life in this point. I think in Goodreads, I'm somewhere in like the 300 range, 400 range for reading. And like, that's not including the years that I didn't have Goodreads or all the library books I read. And like, I'm almost embarrassed that like of how many 5 stars I've given books before this, because this book just truly changed my life. And, you know, to put in a little plug, whatever you're able to do, whether it's volunteering your time or donating supplies, especially for women's shelters, healthcare, or feminine hygiene products, which are so expensive. And, you know, I mean, if you've ever used or had to buy a feminine hygiene product, you understand that they are costly and there's like a lot involved. And, you know, share your blessings, because the people who endure and go through and come out the other side of domestic violence and abuse, they need it. They need that little bit of extra from the people around them, because it's a hard journey. And while it comes from inside, for them to be able to get up and out, that is not without other people inspiring them or continuing to remind them that there is something, a life outside of this that they can get to. Also, life is just easier with a little bit of help. So if we can help people, that's my plea for the day. If not, just read this book. I feel like everyone should have to read it. Not everyone, but I feel like it's a great book for anyone who is young and in college and dating, whether that's male, female, anything in between. Like, I recommend this from not just a place of good reading or a great story or a romance or literature. I recommend this book from a special place in my soul. Like, this one will stay with me forever. I actually still can't walk by it and look at it without tearing up a little bit. And I read it in March. This recording is currently happening in May. I've been trying not to include that, but I still cannot walk by, look at this book and not tear up or cry. So highly recommend. It is part of the Hoops. We're going to switch to a little bit later. It is part of the Hoops series, I think is what it's called. I don't remember if it's a collection or a series, but the second one is Block Shot. They're all standalone, so you can read them independently of each other. You don't have to read all of them. I wanted to read all of them. Well, first I wanted to cry. I actually finished reading Long Shot and cried for a day and a half. Like, I'd be sitting at my computer working, just crying, thinking about this book, because it touched me. It touched a very special part of my soul. And so you don't have to read all of them. I wanted to. I went on to Block Shot next, which is actually the character of August, his stepbrother and business partner, Jared Foster, and his story with Banner Morales, who, by the way, like, love her. I think about her frequently. Not as much. I think about her in a different way than I think of Iris, because they're two women who are both incredibly fucking strong, but in different ways. And I recently reviewed my review of Faker by Sarah Smith, I believe her name was. And who I wanted that character, that main protagonist, to be, and was like disappointed by, is actually who Banner Morales is. She is a woman in the field of sports agency. She is badass. She's highly intelligent, whip snap smart. She is just a beautiful, caring human being. She leads with her heart. She has drive and passion. She's a fantastic character. Her character is well written. And also her relationship with Jared, their interactions of like being young kids in college to now professional adults who quote unquote hate each other. Like, their whole story, how it evolves, is really interesting. I liked it. I thought it was fun and definitely more of like it's more of a typical, not typical, there's nothing typical about Kennedy Ryan, her books or her writing, but the story is probably what would be considered more of like a typical romance novel, whereas Long Shot is just a literary work, in my opinion. So Blockshot is more of that typical romance, enemies to lovers. I loved reading it. It was fun. They have great sex, all about it. Loved Jared as a character. I loved seeing his hard edges, but then his like, not soft interior, but, you know, more human interior. So I gave that one 4 stars. I would recommend reading it if you're looking for a romance. There is another one. There's Long Shot, Blockshot, Hoop Shot. I did not read the third one yet, Hoop Shot, because I guess it's not really the third one, but I think I just needed to like take the step back, finish healing. I actually like didn't read a book for like 2 or 3 weeks after this. I just like took a break and I needed to reset. So I do recommend it. Definitely recommend reading that whole series. I recommend Kennedy Ryan as an author. And one note that I did kind of forget, but it tied in, where I would actually, it happened last episode too with Phantom by Greer Rivers. Greer Rivers and Kennedy Ryan both really immersed themselves in what they were reading, or what they were writing about. So Greer Rivers has bipolar disorder. Kennedy Ryan spent time talking and listening to survivors of domestic abuse, survivors of domestic violence. And both of those authors did a great job of showcasing the nuances and like the fact that they really listened and heard someone else's experience or their own experience, depending on what you're talking about. With the character of Banner Morales, she speaks Spanish, and her family speaks a specific dialect or has like a regional influence in their language. And so in each of those instances, with the language, with the domestic violence and abuse, with Greer Rivers' bipolar disorder, it's all captured in the acknowledgments, like the research and time that went into it. On the other side of that, Jessica Ward, with the St. Ambrose School for Girls, does say in her acknowledgments that this character kind of just came to her one day. She doesn't have personal experience with bipolar, and there has been some critique on like the internet, because I read the reviews. Anytime I don't love a book, I read the reviews to see like if I'm the only one or what other people thought. And she did get a little bit of pushback through like Goodreads and stuff about people who said that like the way that the mental illness is portrayed in her book was not true to form. And obviously everyone experiences symptoms in like a different capacity or a different way. And so I don't think we can like make a blanket statement for what's true and what's not. But I do, like, I've seen some of the symptoms and some of the expression of her mental illness. I'm 98% sure it's bipolar, but I've seen those in different levels or 2 different levels in people that I know that have a bipolar diagnosis. So I wouldn't say that she was like completely unfounded, but it does, at least from how she wrote the acknowledgement, it sounds like she wrote this character first and then did the research. Whereas I think with the other authors, Greer Rivers and Kennedy Ryan, they kind of, whatever their writing process was, their research really shone through in a special way. Because while Greer Rivers might have, you know, her own experiences with bipolar, in her other 2 books that I read by her, she does have a plethora of other ones, but Rouge and Dreadful. I always have to say Moulin Rouge so I say it correctly and don't say Rogue. But Rouge and Dreadful, both of those, she researched the BDSM kink. She also referenced the Italian language and how to use it and how people genuinely use it in everyday life and not necessarily like formal teaching. She did the same thing with the Irish language. And so it's very interesting the amount of detail and attention to detail that these authors put in that you can really see come through in their writing. And I'm not saying that Jessica Ward didn't, but it was a note that like other people pointed out that they felt that her presentation of mental illness was skewed. So it is something to consider. Like I said, it was an okay book. I obviously loved Greer Rivers' works much more, and Long Shot by Kennedy Ryan just like has a place ingrained in my heart. So those are all of the books that we read. I hopefully gave you a good picture of those. Two of them, but specifically Long Shot, meant so much to me, so I would like to have done it justice. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge all of the people who don't survive domestic abuse and domestic violence, because they are real people, and if they didn't survive, they at least deserve a moment to be acknowledged, to have someone think about them warmly and send love toward their essence. And so just a moment of silence for people who haven't survived. So, thank you for joining me in that moment of silence. It's just something to consider, right? So, in a completely abrupt change of topic, a hard left turn, I'm going to tell you a funny story because I feel like sometimes after a lot of the heavy books that I read, I'm talking to you all now and I'm thinking like, well, no wonder why by the end of March I was bummed out. Like, I read a lot of heavy shit, and I think that might have impacted me a little more than I meant to. But I will tell you a funny story and then kind of start to wrap it up for the day. So I wanted to do something special, and once I get an idea in my head, I tend to like pick it up and run with it. But my best friend in the world, happy birthday, Matthew, I get so excited. I'm like, oh, well, let's have a couple balloons. We'll just have a couple balloons. And I was like, well, he's turning 47. So let's just see how much 47, like, I'm going to go to the Dollar Tree. Let's just see how much could 47 balloons be? Well, then we were trying to do the math, because I walked in. It's like, if they open at 7 o'clock, I was there at 7 o'clock. If they open at 8, I was there at 8. I don't remember what time it was, but I was like the second person through that door. And I think the one immediately before me actually worked there. I'm still not positive. But I walked in and I like took a lap around, and I found some like plates, and like, well, while I'm here, I picked a theme, but I saw some plates. So I got some dinosaur plates, and of course some dinosaur napkins, and then a dinosaur sash, because can't be stopped. I did put the dinosaur figurines back. I was like, we don't need these. So I put those back. But then I thought about getting a cake just to have the dinosaur figurines on, but I was like, that seems unnecessary. Let's not do that. So put those back, walking around. I come around the corner. I kind of like, I have all my stuff. I'm getting ready to check out, but I still need my balloons. And I see this person at the counter, and I walk over and I say, hi. And she turns around. Her name is Liz. I'm like, phenomenal. Elizabeth Liz. This will go great. And I asked her, I was like, I need balloons. She's like, okay. And I was like, do I get them from back there, or just do you have more than that? She goes, well, how many do you need? And I'm like, 47. And so then we start going through like 47 balloons. And then in order to make the math easier, we did one for good luck. So we did 48. Fine. I'm sitting there. I'm like, I want this one and this one. How many do I need? She was amazing. Shout out to Liz at, I think it was Dollar Tree. Because weird. I live in Pennsylvania. You think I would have gone to a Dollar General, but the closest one was a Dollar Tree. So here we are. So I'm talking to her, how many? And she tells me, pick out, like, you need 6. So I pick out whatever. And we go through the whole thing. So now the manager came out, also sweet as pie. She's starting to fill. Liz and I are over here at the counter checking me out. I'm watching all these balloons go up. By the way, when you buy 48 balloons, and they're not all $1. Like, it's $1 plus tax, but also the helium balloons tend to be like $1.50. So it added up much faster than I thought I did, but I didn't care because at this point I was on a birthday extravaganza mission. I was so excited. So in we go. So now they tell me it's going to take a little bit of time. Do you mind coming back later? And I said, not a problem. So I get in the car, I go home, I feel accomplished. So now I'm going to go pick up these balloons. And as I'm getting in my car, I'm like, maybe I should have cleared out the back seat. Like I have a sled from winter still in my back seat and my winter coat, my winter boots. Ironically, they all ended up there at different times, but I have a board game back there. I was like, all right, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. It's just balloons. So I get there and I walk in. The guy online is like, you're going to have to wait. And I'm like, no problem, because he was serving one person. There was no one in line behind. Then he proceeded to take the 3 people that walked up online while I was standing there. Finally, this girl comes in from her break. It's not Liz. Liz had to leave. Or I thought she had left because she wasn't there. So this girl walked in to the front door, was headed to the back, and she goes, oh, can I help you? She couldn't have possibly punched in yet because she just walked in the door. And I'm like, well, I'm just here to pick up those balloons right there because there is a cloud. It looks like a mushroom cloud of just balloons all tied together. And I got my receipt and she's like, oh my God, don't even worry about it. Took my receipt, handed me the stacked balloons. Now I go to leave. I'm one person, maybe a lot of personalities, but one person. And so I'm like opening the double door with the balloons in my hand and I'm trying to pull them through with me. And it's as I'm pulling them through the door that I remember, like, I'm fucking scared of balloons. At least I used to be. Now I think I can say I've surpassed that fear. But, like, I'm pulling the balloons through the door as they're, like, trying to close in on them. No one helped me yet. Don't worry. Humanity steps up. But then, like, I go through the second door once I get all settled in the foyer of double doors at Dollar Tree. Double doors at Dollar Tree. So then I get through the next one. So now I'm outside. And there's this man in the car next to mine. He is the kind of car that you should have been picking up balloons in. But instead of like my tiny little 4-door whatever. So I'm trying, like I get in the car and I'm like, maybe if I pull them through. Because I couldn't seem to push them. So I didn't, the guy's like, good luck with that. And at first I thought I was being sarcastic. Then the more I talked to him, because we struck up a conversation, I think he actually was being genuine. But like, I'm trying to get them in, and I hear the voice of an angel, this beautiful soul. Oh my God, girl! And I'm like, I look up through like the balloons, and I see the back of Liz's bun just bopping around. And she's like, you need help. And I'm like, yes, please. She goes, first of all, get out of the car. So now she helps me get out. And then we're trying to figure out how to get the balloons in. And we're going, and then we're getting them in, but there's still like half to go. Now there's a little more. I move the front seat. Then this woman who actually had been she's older woman, who the guy was serving at the customer at the checkout counter, who he was like, you'll have to wait till I'm done helping her, which was fine. She went to go get her doilies. Apparently, she also got stuck on the long line and then came back out because she goes to the other man. She goes, I'm gonna help too. So then she opens my door and like, she could have been my grandmother. Maybe like a little younger, but like that old lady, like, not old lady, but it's like, whatever happens to skin when we get older, it's almost like it's been around too long and it's gotten like a little yellowed with time. So she has like the same complexion as my grandmother with this like orangish kind of like short haircut. Like she could have been my grandmother. But granted, my grandmother has aged very well. So like shout out to you. But also, you know, it happens. So now we have her on the one end of the car pulling stuff in. Liz and I are over here and like we must look hysterical because she is paler than I am with like this dark black hair, dark black shirt, black fingernails, like, and I just must look like a crazy person now. I'm in like shorts and like a hoodie of sorts. So we just look all discombobulated here. Older lady, young girl, me in the middle, just pulling stuff through my car. So we finally get all of the balloons in. Like all of them. I'm sitting like this against the steering wheel because there's a balloon touching the side of my head. I cannot really see at all through the back of my rearview mirror. I can only use my side mirrors but I can't really even see that one because there's just balloons all there. As I'm getting in my, like, right before I got in my car, I noticed that there is a what is that called? I've become a spectacle, and there is like a crowd of people. The guy in his car who he was waiting for 2 people, all 3 of them are there chain smoking their cigarettes, watching, and they're like, happy birthday to whoever that is. I'm like, oh, thanks. And one person. They're like, one person. So now there's people on the other side of the parking lot. The older woman who helped was standing there with, I guess, one of her friends or someone she started talking to. It's like a spectacle. So now I'm like, this, and right before I go take off, I like cracked my window because I just needed to breathe for a second, and the woman in the car next to me, the one chain smoking her cigarettes, is like, do you live close? And I'm like, yeah, 5-minute drive. She's like, all right, I hope you don't get pulled over. I'll keep my fingers crossed. And I'm like, what? She goes, well, it's illegal. I had no fucking clue it was illegal to drive like that. Apparently it is, but it all turned out great. I managed to drive home like this. There's a video of it somewhere. Like, I put it on the dash, kind of like. So I managed to get all of the balloons home. Then I somehow got them from the car up into my apartment. So we have decked out balloons. I thought it was a funny story to share after all the other heavy stuff. It was very lighthearted, helium pun intended. But it was definitely fun. And the look of surprise on that man's face made it absolutely worth it, because he is one of those people who I just feel like his birthday kind of gets like brushed around a holiday or like he doesn't get the credit he deserves. So I was so happy to be able to throw like a little shindig for my bestest buddy. And let's be real, I love my apartment. It's 2-bedroom. But I'm like putting the balloons out, and I guess because of like we were trying to find a number that was easily divisible, Liz was helping me to get the right number. I ended up with 56 balloons. So 56 balloons fit in my little car and all over my apartment. I had some in my bedroom, the bathroom, the hallway, in this room, in my kitchen, so everywhere. And there's still 3 that are filled with air in the other room. We are 3 months solid with these babies, and they still have a ton of helium. So super exciting, but it was a lot of fun, and it was great to be able to make someone's face light up like that. So, you know, happy birthday if you're celebrating today. Happy birthday, Matthew. And then all we have left is the no and a safe moment. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know if everyone has kind of noticed that I have taken a giant step back from social media, and it started in February. I just decided that like I needed a break, and a lot of it had to do with the fact that I'd been working on this novel, but I hadn't really gotten it quite done yet. I kept doing short stories on Tuesdays, and I was excited to do it. I love creating, so I would write the short story and I'd be so excited. But I was taking the time and putting it there and not putting it into my novel, which is a story that I really love and I feel really good about, and I wanted to work on it. And in addition to those 2 things, I was also taking a lot of time for social media, and it like wasn't rewarding to me. So I just decided to take a giant step back and do the things that made me happy and what I wanted to focus on. I had decided I had some PTO time that was going to expire for work, and I didn't want to lose it, so I decided to use it. So toward like the middle end of March, I took a week off, used my time. I went down to the Outer Banks, and I was like, I'm going to write. I thought I was going to just write novel, but I ended up feeling inspired, and I wrote 2 pieces that I ended up submitting to a contest. One was 5,000 words, and the other one was just under 2. But it was really nice to be able to just like relax and ease into it. I got to walk around and do bike riding, and there was this coffee shop that I'm like obsessed with. It's called The Front Porch. I actually have a bag of their coffee home, and it wasn't enough. I had the literal best chocolate chip muffin ever. It put Costco's to shame, and I fucking love a Costco chocolate chip muffin. Stick that bitch in the freezer, take it out, eat it right before it's fully defrosted, mostly defrosted, not fully. It is delightful. Sometimes you can even slap a little bit of hot sauce on it. Anyway, the one from The Front Porch, even better. It was like a muffin brownie explosion of love in your mouth. But I had a great time in Outer Banks by myself. I definitely pulled some inspiration from there to put into my novel that I did work on while I was there. I think all in all, I got just about 40 to 45,000 words done between novel and then my 2 contest pieces, or the 2 pieces I ended up submitting to the contest. It was a very nice Airbnb. I think because of like, I'm watching Fear Factor, which is a show I used to love when I was younger, obviously when it was on and stuff. Plus, I had been listening to Dark Vanessa on the drive down on audiobook, and she, like, where I left off, she was in this, like, apartment, and she's kind of a slob and, like, things like that. And the way she described it, and just, I think between those two things, plus the rain outside, I just was feeling like, I'm going to say emo, because I don't even know if it's the right way to call it, but that's what I'm going to go with. And so I just started writing this, like, this story about this sad young girl. And it ended up turning into a contest piece that I submitted. The part that I took from my real life is that thinking I know what I want and then experiencing it and being like, well, this wasn't fucking what I want. This hurt and I didn't like it. Like, it hurt emotionally, it hurt physically, whatever the case may be. And that energy is what went into that story. And so, you know, I did have a conversation earlier this year with someone about being inspired versus writing for other people. Again, there's this damn fucking quotation marks in the air. But I write my stories for me. My inspiration comes from books I'm reading, comes from the world outside, comes from my own experiences, comes from, like, the weird corners of my brain. And so, you know, there's really no one moment that stood out for the no one is safe moment, other than we truly are a culmination of our experiences, the stories we hear, the people that are around us. There's that expression, like, you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And it is a great time to remind everybody that no one is just one thing. No one is just one out on their own Toblerone. And in my world, no one is safe. Bye! Happy St. Patrick's Day, happy birthday, happy everything in March. Thank you so much for listening to No One Is Safe. This podcast means so much to me. If you've enjoyed it, please consider liking, subscribing, sharing, and leaving a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. For more content or more information on me, please follow my Instagram page at Elizabeth Scozzari Author and check out my website, elizabethscozzari.com. Thank you so much again, and go out and have a wonderful day. See you next week.